My name is Claire Okafor. I'm 30 years old. And the night before Thanksgiving, when my mother sent a text to 40 people telling them not to bother including me, was when I finally understood that being indispensable and being valued are two entirely different things, and that I had spent years confusing one for the other. The text came in at 9:47 p.m. I was sitting on my couch with a glass of water and a work document open on my laptop, doing the kind of low-level evening review that had become habitual in my line of work. My phone lit up on the cushion beside me. I picked it up and saw the preview in the group thread, a thread that included my aunts, my cousins, my parents' neighbors who had known me since I was 7, and my father's brother's family in 2 states. I need everyone to know that Claire is too much to deal with. Don't feel obligated to include her tomorrow or going forward. We love her, but we need peace. I read it. I set the phone face up on the cushion. I picked up my water glass. I put it down without drinking. 4 minutes passed. I know it was 4 minutes because I checked the time before I looked at the thread again. In those 4 minutes, my father had forwarded the text to 6 additional contacts in the extended family, people who hadn't been on the original thread. My cousin Deja sent me a private message that said only, Claire. My aunt on my mother's side sent a thumbs-up reaction to my mother's message, which I saw before I closed the thread. I did not reply. I did not call. I opened my banking app and I navigated to the account I had maintained for 5 years, the one with my mother's mortgage servicer as a payee, the one that processed a transfer of $1,740 on the 15th of every month without interruption since I had set it up in the autumn of the year I turned 25. I looked at it for a moment. Then I closed the app, without changing anything. What none of them knew, what my mother had not once acknowledged in 5 years of receiving that transfer, was that the account existed because I had made it exist, and that its continued existence was entirely within my discretion. I closed my laptop. I went to bed. I want to tell you who I was before that night because the night only makes sense with that context. I grew up the second of 3 children in a household that ran on the specific economy of a family where money was always sufficient but never easy. My father worked in facilities management for a hospital network, steady, essential work, the kind that keeps institutions functioning and that institutions systematically undervalue. My mother worked part-time at a dental office until I was 12, then transitioned to managing the household full-time when my youngest brother Terrence developed the asthma that required monitoring and appointments and a level of domestic coordination that she decided was a job in itself, which it was. My older sister Vanessa was, by the common understanding of our household, the one most likely to make something of herself in the way the family recognized. She was sharp, socially fluent, the kind of person who walks into a room and is immediately assessed as capable by people who have not yet spoken to her. She went to a well-regarded university on a partial scholarship, and my parents assembled the rest, savings, a small loan, a contribution from my paternal grandmother, with the specific pride of people investing in a sure thing. I was not, in the family's accounting, a sure thing. Not because I was less capable than Vanessa, but because what I was capable of did not translate easily into the language my parents used to measure achievement. I was precise. I was methodical. I liked systems. The way they could be built, the inefficiencies in them that most people overlooked, the way a well-designed process could do more work than 3 people doing the same thing manually. None of this was legible at the dinner table. Vanessa could say, I got a 3.91 GPA this semester, and the table understood what that meant. When I said I had spent the weekend building a tracking spreadsheet for my school's volunteer coordination program that had reduced scheduling errors by 60%, my mother said, That's nice, honey, and my father asked Vanessa about her internship applications. I am not telling you this as grievance. I am telling you this as context because the pattern at that dinner table was the same pattern that produced the text message 20 years later, and understanding the pattern is the only way to understand what I chose to do about it. I attended a state university. My parents contributed what they could, which was modest, and I worked 2 part-time jobs for 3 of my 4 years to cover the rest. I graduated with a degree in operations management and a 3.87 GPA and a part-time job offer at a logistics consulting firm where I had interned the previous summer, which became full-time 6 weeks after graduation when the person I had been hired under recognized that I had reorganized their client intake process in a way that saved the team approximately 11 hours a week and suggested I be promoted before I had officially started. I was good at my work. I want to say this plainly and without qualification. I was good at it in the way that some people are good at things that look like ordinary competence until someone actually examines the results, at which point the competence reveals itself to be something more specific and more rare. I had an aptitude for seeing where systems leaked, where money or time or effort was disappearing through gaps that had been there so long no one noticed them anymore, and I had the patience to document the gap, propose the fix, and implement it without requiring anyone to acknowledge that it had been my idea. This aptitude advanced my career steadily. By the time I was 25, I was a senior process analyst at the consulting firm, managing 3 junior analysts and a client roster that generated $1.3 million in annual revenue for the practice. My salary had grown with the title. I had moved into an apartment I could afford without calculation. I had, for the first time in my adult life, a financial cushion that felt like an actual cushion rather than a veneer over nothing. It was in this context that my mother called me on a Tuesday evening in early October to tell me that they were going to lose the house. Not immediately, not dramatically, but the sequence she described, in the careful way she described it, was the sequence of a family that had made several interlocking decisions: early retirement for my father, a home equity withdrawal for Terrence's medical expenses, a refinanced mortgage rate that had adjusted, that were each individually manageable and collectively not. The payment due on the 15th was going to be $1,740, and there was $890 in the account they used to make it, and my father's pension check had been delayed by a processing error and would not arrive for 11 days. She did not ask me directly. She described the situation. She told me what the numbers were. She let the silence at the end of her description do the work that she did not want to do herself, which was ask her second daughter for help. I said I would handle it. I set up the transfer that evening. The $1,740 went out the following morning, and the mortgage was paid. I told my mother I would set up a recurring transfer for the 15th of each month until they were in a better position. She thanked me. She said I had always been the dependable one. It was one of the few times I can remember her describing me with a word that felt like a compliment rather than a consolation. The transfer ran for 5 years. My father's pension resolved. Terrence's asthma stabilized. My parents' financial position improved incrementally, as it does when the acute crisis passes and the underlying structure is functional again. No one suggested stopping the transfer. I did not suggest stopping it. What had been an emergency had become, without ceremony or discussion, a structure, and the structure had become invisible, which is what structures do when they work long enough. I did not tell Vanessa about the transfer. I did not tell my aunts. I did not bring it up at family gatherings because bringing it up would have required me to explain what the transfer was, and explaining it would have meant inserting myself into a narrative about my parents' situation in a way that felt, at the time, like the wrong kind of presence. What I had not fully examined was what 5 years of invisible contribution had allowed my family to believe about me, about what I provided and what I cost. The text arrived at 9:47 p.m. on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. I have already told you what it said. What I have not told you is what the preceding 2 weeks had looked like, because the text did not arrive without a context that preceded it. 3 weeks before Thanksgiving, I had raised, in a phone call with my mother, a question about the holiday. Specifically, whether we might do something smaller that year. My firm had promoted me. I was now a director of operational strategy, managing a team of 9 and a client portfolio that had grown to $4.7 million in annual revenue, and the promotion had come with a project timeline that required travel in early December, and I was trying to manage my energy before that stretch. I asked whether we could do Thanksgiving at my apartment, with just the immediate family, instead of the traditional gathering at my parents' house with the aunts and cousins and the associated preparation load. My mother's response was that Thanksgiving had always been at their house, and that changing it would upset the family. I said I understood and that I wasn't insisting, just asking. She said she would think about it. She did not raise it again. The following Sunday, at a family lunch I attended at my parents' house, my Aunt Frederica mentioned that she had heard I was trying to cancel Thanksgiving. I said I had asked about changing the format, not canceling it. My mother, from the kitchen, said something I could not fully hear, but that produced a small laugh from Frederica that landed with a particular quality. The following Wednesday, the text. My mother's structural reason for the text is something I have had years to understand. She is a woman who manages family through consensus and through the management of others' perceptions, and when she felt that I had attempted to disrupt a structure she controlled, the Thanksgiving gathering, the extended family's idea of how things were done, she responded by going to the source of her authority, which was the group, and narrating me as the problem. The text was not irrational. It was efficient. It accomplished, in one message, what she wanted. It positioned her as reasonable and me as difficult, and placed the burden of interpretation on 40 people who had not been in the conversation. What she did not account for was the account. Thanksgiving came. I did not attend. I made a point of not announcing my absence. I did not send a message saying I wouldn't be there. I did not explain my reasoning to the family thread. I simply did not arrive. My cousin Deja texted me at 1 p.m. to ask if I was coming. I said I was taking some time. She said she understood without asking me to clarify what I meant. The following Monday, I logged back into the banking app. I looked at the scheduled transfer for December 15th. I changed the status to inactive. Then I called my bank and asked to speak with a representative about formally closing my participation in the payee relationship, a process that took 11 minutes and required only my account information and verbal confirmation. The transfer did not go out on December 15th. On December 16th, my mother called me at 7:23 a.m. I was already at my desk. I let the call go to voicemail. She left a message saying there seemed to be something wrong with the account, and she wanted to make sure everything was okay. I called her back at 6 p.m. after my workday was finished. "The transfer isn't running anymore," I said, before she could frame the conversation as a question about the account's health. A pause. "What do you mean?" "I closed my participation in the payment," I said. "The mortgage payment for December didn't come from my account. Going forward, it won't." The silence that followed was longer than the pauses I was accustomed to in conversations with my mother. I heard her set something down, a mug, I thought, by the sound. "Claire," she said. "Mom," I said. "The payment is due on the 15th, I said. "I know. You have time to make other arrangements." "We don't have," she started. "I know what your situation is," I said. "I've been looking at it for 5 years. You have options I can help you think through if you'd like. But the transfer is closed." Another silence. "Because of the text," she said. "Because of the text," I said. "And because of what the text told me about how the arrangement was understood." She did not respond immediately. I heard her breath. I heard, in the background, my father's voice saying something I couldn't make out. "What do you want me to do?" she said. "Right now," I said, "I'd like you to talk to Dad and make a plan for December. I'll be available to talk later in the week if you want to discuss options. But I won't be restoring the transfer." I ended the call. I sat at my kitchen table for a few minutes. Then I got up and started dinner because dinner needed to be made, and making it was something I could do. The options I had referenced were real. I was not posturing. I had over 5 years of watching my parents' financial structure, a clear picture of where they had flexibility and where they didn't. The mortgage payment was the largest fixed obligation. The equity line had been paid down to a balance of $23,400, which was manageable at their income level with some adjustment. My father's pension was sufficient for their basic expenses. The gap I had been filling was real, but it was not unsurvivable. It was the gap between comfortable and tight, not between stable and collapse. I knew this. My parents, I suspected, also knew this, but had not needed to examine it carefully because the transfer had meant they never had to. The week after that phone call was the consequence cascade that my mother's text had authored, and I want to be precise about how I understood it. She had built it. Not me. I had simply stopped holding a structure in place that she had believed would always be there because she had never imagined a version of me that was capable of letting it go. On December 17th, the mortgage servicer sent a delinquency notice, a standard notice, the kind that goes out automatically when a payment is missed. My mother called me to tell me she had received it. I said I understood and reiterated that I was available to talk through options. On December 19th, Vanessa called me. She was direct in the way she is when she is managing something she considers a problem with a clear solution. "Mom told me what happened," she said. "What do you need her to do?" "I don't need her to do anything," I said. I made a decision about my own financial arrangement. That's not something I need resolved. She sent a stupid text, Vanessa said. She sent a text to 40 people telling them not to include me, I said. While I was paying her mortgage. Yes. A pause. I didn't know about the mortgage. I know, I said. The silence on Vanessa's end had a different quality from my mother's silence. This one was computing. How long, she said. 5 years, I said. 60 transfers. She did not say anything for a moment. Then, Claire. I'm not asking for anything from you, I said. I just want you to understand what happened. She said she understood. We talked for a few more minutes. When we ended the call, she had not committed to anything and I had not asked her to, but something in the conversation had shifted, some understanding about the shape of our family that Vanessa had not previously held. My parents made the December payment through a combination of their checking account and a short-term arrangement with my father's credit union that their personal banker, a man named Gordon Achabe, helped them set up over 2 days. I know this because my father told me when he called me on December 22nd. My father's calls are different from my mother's. He does not circle. He called to say 2 things, that they had handled the payment and that he was sorry. He said the text was wrong and that he should have said so the night it happened. He said he had let things go unsaid for a long time and that he was aware of it. I said I appreciated him saying so. I did not tell him it resolved anything because it didn't resolve anything. It named something which is different, and naming is its own value. The 7 years between that December and now did not move in a straight line. I want to be honest about that rather than compress it into a tidy arc. My relationship with my mother went through a period of real distance, not hostile, not dramatic, but the specific distance of 2 people who have had an honest reckoning and are not sure yet what to build in its place. We spoke. We saw each other at the events that matter. Terrence's graduate program completion, a cousin's wedding, my father's retirement dinner in the 3rd year. We were cordial. We were careful. We were not what we had been before the text, which had been a performance of closeness that cost me more than I had recognized. What was happening in parallel, during those 7 years, was my career. The director role I had held at the time of the text was the role I was in for another 18 months. Then I was recruited, through a referral from a client whose distribution network I had restructured, saving them $847,000 in annual overhead, to join a regional operations firm as VP of Process Strategy. I took the role. I spent 3 years there building a methodology that the firm eventually formalized as a proprietary service offering, which I led the development of and which became responsible for 40% of the firm's new client revenue within 2 years of launch. In the 4th year after the text, I left the VP role to co-found an operational consulting practice with a colleague named Iris Fontaine, who had been the VP of Client Services at the same firm. We had complementary aptitudes. I built and optimized systems, she built and sustained relationships, and the practice grew faster than either of us had projected. By year 6, we had 14 full-time staff, a client roster that spanned 4 industries, and an office on the 9th floor of a building in the financial district. In year 7, we hired. The hire that matters for this story was not a senior hire. It was an administrative coordinator position, a role that supports the practice's internal operations, managing scheduling, document routing, client communication logistics, and office administration. It is a well-compensated role for what it is. We pay fairly, and the benefits are good, and the office environment is the kind that people stay in. The application came through our standard portal. I was not reviewing applications at that stage. We had an HR consultant, a woman named Patricia Wole, who ran our initial screening. Patricia brought 3 finalists to Iris and me for second-round interviews. My mother's name was on the finalist list. I want to be precise about what I felt in that moment, because precision is what I owe you. I felt nothing dramatic. I felt the specific quality of recognition that comes when a thing you had not anticipated arrives in a form so plain that it requires no interpretation. Her name on the list, the role she had applied for, the building she would need to come to for the interview. I told Patricia I had a personal connection to one of the finalists and asked if she could run the second-round interview without me for that candidate. Patricia asked no questions, which is one of the reasons we work well with her. She ran the interview. The notes Patricia sent me afterward were straightforward. My mother was organized, punctual, experienced in administrative coordination from her years at the dental office, and had spent the intervening years doing contract administrative work for a medical practice. She was, for the role, qualified. She was, in Patricia's assessment, the strongest of the 3 finalists on the operational requirements. I called Iris into my office and told her the situation. All of it. Iris listened without interrupting, which is how she listens when she is thinking rather than reacting. When I finished, she asked one question. What do you want to do? I said I wanted to hire her if she was the right person for the role, and that Patricia's assessment suggested she was, and that I wanted to be clear with my mother before the offer was made about what the professional relationship would require. Iris said, then call her. I called my mother that evening. She answered on the second ring. I told her I had seen her application. I told her I understood she had interviewed, and that the feedback had been positive. I told her that if we extended an offer and she accepted, she would be an employee of the practice, that I was one of the 2 principals of the practice, and that our professional relationship would need to operate on those terms. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I know. I said, I want to make sure that's clear before anything else. She said it was clear. I said, the role is yours if you want it. Patricia will send the offer letter. She said, thank you, Claire. I said, see you Monday. She has been with the practice for 14 months. She is good at the role, precise with scheduling, reliable with document routing, the kind of administrative presence that makes a busy office function without requiring anyone to manage her closely. Patricia checks in with her on a monthly basis, as she does with all staff. The feedback has been consistently strong. We are professional with each other. We are not warm in the way that mothers and daughters are warm, but we're something that is better than what we were for a long time, which is 2 people who could not fully see each other.
She sees me now.
I am certain of that. I watch it in the way she moves through the office, the way she answers questions from the junior staff, the way she occasionally pauses at my office door when she is delivering something and holds the door frame for a moment before she knocks. I do not think she is proud of the text. I think she has had 7 years to consider it, and that consideration has produced something more useful than pride or regret, something like clarity, which is what I arrived at too, in my own time and in my own way. What I want to say before I leave you is this. The thing you are reliably providing, the thing you do without announcement, the thing that would be missed immediately if it stopped, is not invisible because it is small. It is invisible because you have made it easy for people not to look. The day you stop making it easy is not the day you become someone different. It is the day you become someone legible. And legibility, it turns out, is the beginning of everything that comes after. Before I go, I want to ask you something I have thought about since the morning my mother came in for her first day, 14 months ago on a Monday, in a coat I had not seen before, carrying a leather folder she had clearly bought for the occasion. There were 6 other people in the office when she arrived. None of them knew she was my mother. She introduced herself by her first name. She shook Patricia's hand and asked where to put her things. She sat down at her desk and opened her laptop. And I watched from the doorway of my office for about 30 seconds before I went back to my own desk and started my morning. My question for you is this. If you had been in that office on that Monday, if you had known the whole history, the text, the 5 years, the 7 years, the 14 months, what would you have wanted to happen in those 30 seconds at the doorway? Would you have wanted her to look up? And if she had, what should that look have carried? Tell me in the comments. I read every one. If this story stayed with you, subscribe. There's a new story every week. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next one. And if you know someone who has been the invisible foundation of a family that never looked down to see what it was standing on, share this with them. I'll see you next time.